This will be difficult. There will be pundits and politicians and special interest lobbyists publicly warning of a tyrannical, all-out assault on liberty. Not because that's true, but because they want to gin up fear.
President Obama ready to wage a political battle for his gun proposals against the gun lobby. And joining me now is Erich Pratt, Communications Director for Gun Owners of America. Mr. Pratt, thank you very much for being with us.
Thank you for having me.
First of all, your response to the president, his proposals. Are there things that he proposed that you could support, perhaps tightening the rules on background checks?
Well, we don't think that any of the things that he's proposing would have stopped what happened in Connecticut, wouldn't have stopped Adam Lanza from killing a victim and stealing those firearms to commit such an atrocity. If there is an area of agreement that we have with the president, he quoted from the Declaration of Independence saying that all men are endowed by their creator with certain inalienable rights. And that's a very important concept of inalienable rights, because whether it's the right to vote, right to sit behind a microphone, or the right to choose how I'm going to protect myself, all those rights cannot be infringed, as the Second Amendment says.
Well, they can be infringed because the First Amendment is infringed. I have to obey all sorts of regulations from the FCC. There are things that we can't say in a crowded theater. So every right also carries with it responsibilities.
What's interesting about that, though, is we don't gag people before they go into the theater. We punish the lawbreakers. And in the same way, we would argue, punish those who abuse the right, but don't gag law-abiding citizens before they exercise their right. We shouldn't be registering them like sex offenders like they are in New York. We shouldn't be in any way impeding them if they have not committed a crime.
Is there nothing in this conversation that the president has engaged in that you think is a valuable step? Perhaps regarding some of the infringements on privacy that many would argue are entailed in the mental health requirements in the new New York State law.
Sadly, what I think is missing is what actually would help, and that's what 85% of the American people support, is having an armed teacher or principal to be able to stop a school shooting. I mean, even Gallup looked at this last month, and said that actually more Americans favored that approach than gun restrictions. So I think there's a big misreading of the political wins, and just like in 1994 with the Congress and 2000 with the presidency, I think there could be a real wake-up call politically, that there could be a real backlash happening here.
I've talked to gun owners and gun supporters, people like Tom Ridge, who are former elected officials and former Secretary of Homeland Security in the cabinet, and they argue that the assault weapons have that there's no reason for these weapons and these magazines. They don't, you can't hunt with them. They could be controlled in target practice, but there's no reason for them to be sold.
Well, first of all, we have a Bill of Rights, not a Bill of Needs. I think gun owners react to being told what they need or don't need. But I think we should define what we're talking about. These are not machine guns. These are not owned by any military on the earth. These are semi-automatic in nature, which means you pull the trigger once, one bullet comes out the barrel. These are commonly owned by millions of American citizens. And I think that's what's so offensive, is that now they're going to be told, like in New York, they're going to have to register guns that they've lawfully owned for years.
What's the problem with registering a gun? If you have a Bushmaster, what is the I mean, first of all, why would you have a Bushmaster? What is the use?
President Reagan owned an AR-15. Senator J. Rockefeller.
And he supported gun control, and he advocated for it.
In his later years, and I think we have to keep that in account.
In his later years, he was almost killed by John Hinckley.
All through his presidency, he opposed gun control. That's my point. Senator J. Rockefeller, on the other side of the aisle, owns an AR-15, and we've talked with many legislators on Capitol Hill which own those type of firearms, and that's the very point, that these are guns which are commonly owned. So who would want to use them? Well, men and women would want to use these types of firearms to protect their homes, because they have much less firepower than your average deer rifle.
I want to challenge also your polling data, because the Pew poll said that 57% of Americans, a clear majority, oppose having having armed guards in schools?
Well, this was Gallup from last month, and you can check that out. And here,
depends on how the question is asked.
Well, yes, it does. And Pew's been very well known for that. I think Gallup's pretty calls it straight. And Gallup here 2 days ago, what do you think is the most important problem facing the country? This was an open-ended question. At the top, economy in general at 21%. Goes down to the federal budget deficit, dissatisfaction with government, unemployment, lack of money, taxes, ethics, all the way at the bottom.
Let me ask you about the NRA video, the web video, which targets basically the president's children who have Secret Service protection as all children of presidents. Over the line?
Based on this poll, he should have been apologizing to those children for breaking their piggy banks to steal, to pay off the national debt. That's what Americans are concerned about. He should be apologizing to them.
I'm asking you about the web video.
Because his children...
Apologizing to which children?
The children that he had there on display, because his children, his own children, are well protected. Joe Biden opened up by saying that schools should be a sanctuary. Well, he must have this confused, because the president's girls do go to a sanctuary. It's well armed there, but most American kids are not protected at all.
You don't think the president's children should be off limits?
I think they should be protected, and I think our children should be. I have 7 school-age children, and I would have hoped and prayed that if they were there in that Connecticut school, that there would have been a teacher like a Joel Myrick, who in Pearl, Mississippi High School stopped a school shooting in its tracks. He was the assistant principal. That's how you stop it. It's not cowering in fear, waiting 10, 15, 20 minutes.
The question recurs, is it over the line for the NRA to put up a web video addressing the issue of the president's children having Secret Service protection?
Why is it over the line for them, for the NRA to talk about children, but it's not over the line for the president to bring in children? That's the disconnect.
Because the parents who were with those children in the White House complex today brought their children. Their children wrote to the president, and they were voluntarily becoming part of this political debate. Children of presidents have been off limits for decades.
Well, unless they're, I suppose, Republican children of presidents. I mean, there's a big double standard here.
And the
double standard
and Barbara
is
Bush and other children have not been
let's
discussed.
talk about the Bush children. They were hounded. There are 2 girls. They sure were. But let's talk about the double standard.
In a political ad from a lobbying group, sir?
The double standard is that in the 15-block area of Capitol Hill, there's 1,800 Capitol Hill officers to protect them. How many armed adults are protecting our children right now at their schools? It is not a sanctuary, and that's the magnet that is attracting criminals. That's why when you see all the mass shootings over the last 20 years, with the exception of one, they all occurred in gun-free zones. And that's because these guys, they don't want to go shoot up a police station or a gun store or a gun show where guns are going to be pointed back at them. They want to be the only one with a gun.
We have to leave it there. Thank you very much for coming in.
Thanks.